Hi everyone, my name is Ariel and I'm in the class of 2022 at Trinity School in New York City. Today I'm going to be talking to you about asking and receiving questions during your Parli rounds. So first up is a POC or a point of clarification. Points of clarification are probably the most uncommon form of questions, and you might not ask or receive one every round, but that doesn't mean they're not important. So what does a POC do? You call a POC to ask a question about the government's definitions. For example, if the Gov defines this House as Bill Clinton, and you'd like to know whether it's Clinton in his first or second term. That means that you can ask a POC only if you're on the opposition side, and only when the government is setting some definitions for the round. And how do I actually ask a POC? You just say, I'd like to call a POC to the judge, and they'll stop the time. Then you ask your question, and the Prime Minister, who's the first speaker for the government, will answer your question. After, time will resume. So, right now, you might be thinking, well, if points of clarification rarely come up, then why do I even need to know them? Well, in one of my first rounds, I had no idea what a point of clarification was, and my opponents called one on me, and I was super confused, and I would hope that nobody ever has to go through that embarrassment again. You might be thinking right now, you're just making this up for a YouTube video. Well, sadly, I'm not, and if you don't believe me, then here's the video.
That everybody must have the bare minimum. Stop now.
Are there POCs? Are there POCs?
Point of clarification.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Yeah. What's the question?
So if you want to watch the rest of that round, you want to watch me embarrass myself in more rounds, or you want to watch informational videos, then you should definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is called the New York Parliamentary Debate League. You should also make sure to follow us on social media, which is going to be linked in the description. So next up is a POI or point of information. Points of information are probably the most common form of questions. You're most likely going to ask and receive a few POIs per round. So what does a POI actually do? When your opponents are speaking, you can ask a question that's supposed to poke a hole in their case. For example, if their case is arguing that we should adopt a universal basic income, a question that you can ask is, how will the government pay for one? Who can ask a POI? When can you ask a POI? You can ask a POI when your opponents are speaking. You can ask POIs only in the first 4 speeches of the round, meaning that you cannot ask POIs in the final 2 speeches of the round. Also, there's a concept called protected time. Don't ask POIs during the first and last minute of each speech, because that's protected time. Next up is, how do I ask a POI? You can stand up and say POI. If you're debating in an online format because of COVID-19, it might be slightly different. If you're online, then before the round, make sure to ask whether you should type the word POI into the chat, or if you should just say POI verbally. And finally, how do I receive a POI? Well, before I go on, I should mention that you're not obligated to accept any POIs at all. However, it's considered bad form to deny every single POI. If you don't want to accept a POI, you can just say no. If you're in the middle of a point and you want to take the POI after you finish your sentence, just say, I'll take your question at the end of this point, and then call on the person who's asking. The general rule is that you should accept 2 to 3 POIs per speech. And finally, a POO or a point of order. When can you call a POO? You can call a POO on your opponents only in the final 2 speeches. There are only 2 reasons why you should call a POO. The first is that your opponents are grossly over time, at least 20 seconds over the grace period. So that means if your opponents have a 5-minute speech and they have a grace period of 30 seconds, then you should probably call a POO at around 5:50. The second reason is that your opponents have just brought up a new argument. So how do I ask a POO? Just say, I'd like to call a POO. The judge will stop time and then you can state what you think is new. The judge can either rule in the moment whether the point is new, or the judge can say, point taken under consideration, which means that they'll review it at the end of the round. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and check out our website, nyparli.org, for more resources on Parli debate. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Good luck in your rounds.